But I think we are witnessing America as a failed social experiment. And what I mean by that is that the history of black people for over 200 and some years in America has been looking at America's failure. Its capitalist economy could not generate and deliver in such a way that people could live lives of decency.
So what you just heard there was Dr. Cornel West with Anderson Cooper on CNN earlier this evening, calling America a failed social experiment. And Dr. Cornel West was 100% correct in doing so. He is connecting the passing of George Floyd at the hands of Derek Chauvin to broader socioeconomic trends. And as always, Cornel West is on point when he does this. Frankly, what we're seeing right now, according to Dr. West, and I agree with him, is the failure of American capitalism. American capitalism has supposedly been created to provide opportunity and dignity and prosperity for everyone, yet what we see is for working class people, and especially working class people that are black or Latino or indigenous, they do not have that opportunity. They do not have that dignity. They do not have that prosperity available to them. And that at various points throughout American history, including today, you are seeing the consequences of the failure of American capitalism play out in real time. And that's what Dr. Cornel West is speaking about. He's making it very clear. This is an individual tragedy. We should not lose track of George Floyd and his family and the men and women like him who have lost their lives at the hands of unaccountable police actions. Nonetheless, this is rooted in the very, very core of America's systems of injustice. And if you don't see that, you're never ever gonna have a chance of fixing the problems. You'll just be whippersnippering the top of the lawn. You'll never address the roots of those weeds of injustice, of inequality, of intolerance. That's what Dr. Cornel West is saying. And I think what he's really getting at is that America needs a radical overhaul. It's not just about policing even. It really isn't. It's not just about ensuring that policing is safe. It's about questioning the fundamental role of police as the defenders of the racial and economic and social and political status quo. It's not just about this particular instance. It's about the fact that African Americans, that other minorities are disproportionately likely to be, in low-wage, precarious jobs with substandard housing and education and healthcare. This is what it's about. It's not about one incident on its own. It's about a quarter of a millennium of injustice against a group of people, and against, frankly, to a lesser degree, all working class people in American history. That's what it's about. And that's where Cornel West also really hammers home that it's not even just about representation. I've talked about how representation matters. It is important that leadership reflects the demography of a population. That if your country has a parliament or a legislature or a senate or a Congress that doesn't look like the population, that's bad. But it's not necessarily doing enough when your Congress or your Senate or your Parliament or your legislature looks like the population, because race is not the only form of politics in a capitalist society. And Cornel West notes that in this following clip.
We've tried black faces in high places. Too often our black politicians, professional class, middle class, become too accommodated to the capitalist economy, too accommodated to the militarized nation state, too accommodated to the market-driven culture tied with celebrity status, power, fame, all of that superficial stuff.
And so what you hear Dr. West saying there is that representation is not enough. It's not enough for more black senators, congressmen, presidents, prosecutors, judges, and juries. That's not enough on its own. There are fundamental flaws within American capitalist society that will not be addressed through a more equitable oppression of working class people. And that's what makes Cornel West so refreshing, because in mainstream media, you will often hear the call for more diversity, but you will very, 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 very rarely hear the call that questions capitalism fundamentally. Right? You'll hear from corporate Democrats the need for 50% of billionaires to be women and so many of them to be minorities, but you will rarely hear the questioning of whether or not we need billionaires in the first place. And this is not to discount the pursuit of racial justice. It isn't. Black people, Latinos, indigenous people in the United States, in Canada, in places all over the world are disproportionately likely to face immediate and historical injustice that has not changed, and it doesn't look like it's going to change in the immediate future. But it doesn't discount the fact that if you have more senators of those same populations, that you will immediately eliminate the problem. Cornel West puts the issue right where it needs to be. Capitalism, inequality, exploitation of working class people by capitalists, by the rich and wealthy and well-connected. That's where it belongs. And Bernie Sanders did the same today when he spoke about George Floyd, when he said that this is an awful instance, that Derek Chauvin's actions against George Floyd are awful, but it is rooted in centuries and decades and generations of oppression that are not just about police and citizens, but are about employers and workers, about education, about healthcare, about all sorts of things that may not be sensational, but may have a greater impact than isolated incidents that get the news coverage. Cornel West put it right where it needs to be. If we want to address systematic inequality, whether based on class or gender or race or any other metric, we have to put our focus right where it needs to be. The system of capitalism is fundamentally designed to underpin and perpetuate and champion inequality. And that inequality will never be strictly economic. Maybe it's primarily economic, but you will not find a society based on any form of justice as long as the major decisions in that society are made by private property and are made by the rich and wealthy and well-connected in manners that are unaccountable to democratic society. We should not lose track of it in this moment. Thank you, Cornel West, for keeping us on focus. Thank you for keeping us on track.